Hello again. Today we have a vintage record watch that belongs to a friend of mine. They want to have it serviced to get it back up and running again, as at the moment it's working intermittently and showing large variations on the time graph in different positions. If you're interested in having your watch serviced, check out my website linked in the description. I also have an eBay page with a few serviced watches up for sale. We start by removing the strap. Removing the case back shows us that our watch comes out the front of the case. The case back screws are undone. The crown is taken out, along with the crystal and the bezel, allowing the movement to be removed from the case. The crown is put back in so the hands can be aligned and removed. To remove the dial, 2 dial screws are loosened. Then the dial can be lifted off. The hour wheel and dial space are removed before they fall off. And on closer inspection of the second hand's pinion, there is a wad of fibres. That can't be doing it any good. Using my handy cannon pinion removal tool, the cannon pinion is liberated from the movement. The movement is turned over and secured to a movement holder. Then the mainspring is let down by holding the click spring out of the way and allowing the crown to turn slowly in my hand. Then, to remove the balance, starting with its screw, then to gently remove it. I'm just choosing the correct size screwdriver for the pallet fork bridge, loosening the screws, and taking them out, before taking out the bridge, and taking out the pallet fork. Next, the click, then the crown wheel, the ratchet wheel, the click spring, the barrel bridge screws, the barrel bridge, then the going train bridge screws, and the going train bridge, the centre wheel, third wheel, the seconds wheel, and escape wheel, as well as the going barrel, are removed. To wrap up the disassembly on the main plate, the movement is turned over and the setting lever spring removed. Then the yoke spring, setting wheel, and yoke. The crown is taken out along with the sliding pinion and winding pinion. The movement is flipped back over and the setting lever screw and the setting lever are removed. And for this watch, I am going to remove the end stones and wash them separately to the main plate. The last part of the movement to disassemble is the going barrel. Pressing it down to open up the lid. Fortunately, the arbor has already come out. Then the mainspring is removed from the barrel. As you can see, the right hand spiral looks okay, but on the left hand side it looks quite damaged. This looks like it's due to it being replaced by hand in the past, so this spring will need to be replaced. And here is the entire movement entirely disassembled and ready for cleaning. The larger and dirty components will be pre-cleaned by hand. The pre-cleaning involves soaking the components in isopropyl alcohol, then scrubbing off the dirt with a fine brush. After the surface dirt is removed, each of the pivot holes are pegged out to ensure they're clean too. Then, all of the small components are placed into baskets and the whole lot are ultrasonically cleaned, with the exception of the balance and pallet forks, which are cleaned by hand. The watch parts are cleaned, rinsed in deionised water, and then rinsed in 2 baths of isopropyl alcohol. The balance is disassembled. The hairspring is released, the stud is loosened, the balance wheel is removed, and the cock is disassembled. 2 tiny screws, and it comes apart, which, along with the pallet forks, are cleaned by hand. Here is the entire movement cleaned and ready for reassembly. We're going to start by putting in a brand new mainspring into the going barrel. This is a new manual wind mainspring, so no need for any additional grease at this point. The new mainspring is pressed into the going barrel. Ping, there it goes. A drop of HP 1300. Then the barrel arbor is reinstalled by pushing it down and twisting it into place. Another drop of HP 1300 on the top of the arbor. The barrel lid is rested on top and snapped into place. Then the main plate is secured to a movement holder and checked to be perfectly clean before installing the escape wheel, second wheel, third wheel, then lubricating and installing the centre wheel. And then the going barrel. The barrel bridge is put on and secured. Then the train wheel bridge is put on, ensuring the free running of all the train wheels. Before being secured. Next, the click spring is installed. The going barrel pivot is oiled with HP 1300 and the ratchet wheel is installed. The click is oiled and installed. Some HP 1300 for the crown wheel. Which is installed with its 2 screws and cover plate. The movement is turned over, and as you can see, I have already installed and oiled the capsule. Before reassembling the keyless works, the third wheel pivot is oiled with HP 1300. The centre wheel is given a bit of Mobius 9501 grease before installing the cannon pinion. A bit of grease for the winding pinion before installing it. And then greasing the ratcheting teeth in situ. Then installing the sliding pinion. The stem is lightly greased and installed through the winding and sliding pinions. A bit of grease on the sliding pinion where the yoke will sit. The setting lever is held against the main plate with a fingered glove whilst it is screwed in. Now, the post for the minute wheel and setting wheel are oiled with HP 1300 before installing them both. The yoke post is oiled and the yoke installed. It is greased where it meets the setting lever and where the yoke spring will rest against it. The yoke spring is installed, along with the setting lever spring, which is carefully greased, and testing the functionality, it all works well. And on the other side too, you can see everything is spinning freely. We're going to continue by reassembling the balance. This is upside down at the moment, as if seen from the dial side. The regulator is put over the end stone, and the balance cock placed over the top of them. And the end stone is screwed into the cock, holding the regulator in by friction. Now, to oil the jewel, a small amount of Mobius 9010 is placed on the centre of the cup of the jewel. Then, an incredibly fine oiler, specifically designed for this task, is used to capillary the oil into the cup, into the space between the jewels. This was repeated once more just to add a little more oil. I was about to put the balance wheel back in, but as you can see, the hairspring is not concentric, and the terminal curve does not put the stud in the correct position. This will have to be adjusted before we put the balance back in the movement. It was difficult to show the concentricity adjustment, but as you can see here, my adjustment of the stud, it was the same technique for both. Holding the hairspring at the point the adjustment needs to be made, and gently manipulating it to be the shape it should be. Then, checking against the balance cock to see if the stud would fit correctly. Eventually, after many light tweaks, everything lines up nicely, and the balance wheel can be refitted. The hairspring is put over the curb pin and the boot closed. The balance is put into the movement and temporarily screwed into place. To tighten the stud screw, and whilst the balance is in the movement, it is possible to sight the position of the impulse jewel in relation to the banking pins. By adjusting the collet on the balance wheel, we can move the impulse jewel to be into the centre of the banking pins. This is the beat error adjustment, which in modern movements is done by adjusting the stud carrier, but this being a vintage watch doesn't have that, so this is the way to correct for beat error. Whilst the balance is still out, the pallet forks can be replaced, along with the pallet fork bridge. A small amount of wind is put into the movement, and the pallet fork action tested. With that being acceptable, the jewels of the pallet fork are oiled from the dial side of the movement with Mobius 9415. The movement can be turned back over, and the balance installed to see if it runs, which it does quite well. The balance can then be secured tightly, and we can have a closer look at the escapement. It's good to see everything ticking along nicely. Now for some lubrication. The escape wheel and seconds wheel are lubricated with Mobius 9010, and the fourth wheel and centre wheels are lubricated with Mobius HP 1300. The same is done for the dial side of the movement too, with the escape wheel and the fourth wheel that holds the seconds hand. The going barrel is lubricated with Mobius HP 1300. A few days later, the balance is regulated, and after a few adjustments, the watch is ready to be reassembled. The cannon pinion is oiled, and the hour wheel and dial washer are placed, so the dial can be put back on, and secured with the dial feet screws. I also like to give the markers on the dial a little buff too. The hour hand can be replaced and pressed down securely, then the seconds hand, just to make sure the hour hand doesn't interfere with it. The minute hand is gently pressed on and secured using the hand press. The case being gold plated has had a very gentle clean and a light polish just to make it shine. The movement with the crown removed can simply be placed into the case. A new crystal is placed onto the bezel before being snapped back onto the case. The crown can be put back in, and the setting lever screw tightened, and the case clamps can be put back in too. And we nearly have a completed watch. Just the case back to be snapped on, and to put the original strap back on too. And there we go. One fully serviced manual wind record watch. Thank you all very much for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing. If you'd like me to service your watch, my website is linked in the description, and I have some watches for sale on my eBay page too, linked in the description as well. Thank you, and hopefully see you again soon. Bye for now.